We were imagined by, yes, it's good to be Jewish. We were imagined, this is the dream brought real, by two Holocaust survivors who built together what they thought could be one good place for everyone. I'm so curious, who is here for the first time? Welcome to the Skirball. We are inspired by an ancient Jewish promise to welcome the stranger. So the hardest part of your day is over and you are just where you belong. Welcome to the Skirball. I could not be more excited for this evening's program. I know that you all are here because you already know who Michael Eisner is, and you already know who Ben Mankiewicz is, and it's still my job to tell you something new about them as we welcome them to the stage. So I'm going to try, and we'll see how it goes. I am a mother of a 11-year-old boy who spent age 6 and 7 in COVID lockdown, and I got to see the transformative power of camp because that's when he got to re-enter a world free of restriction. His quarantined bubble was everything he needed after 18 months of lockdown, and I thank every single day that 1 week he got at a sleepaway camp that saved his childhood in ways I never could have by myself. This is such a fun conversation to get to have tonight. But it's not the first thing I think of when I think of Michael Eisner, because I was originally trained as a lawyer. And I first met Michael and Jane Eisner while I was at a legal aid clinic here in Los Angeles called Betzedek Legal Services. Yes, it's such a good service. And Michael and Jane had a vision of their own, and that was to invest transformative philanthropic dollars with the help and leadership of Trent Stamp and others in intergenerational connections. And I gotta say, the world's aflame around us, and all we see is how divided and intractable those divisions are. And the thing that's harder to bridge than the politics is the age gap so often in a conversation. And I think that the work that Michael and Jane are investing in and thinking about what we get when we learn from one another across generations couldn't possibly be more important now than ever. And I got to see firsthand what that looked like at Betzedek because they invested in services where grandparents took grandkids in who otherwise wouldn't have had a safe and stable home. And it was the most beautiful work to see. And we got to meet Jane and Michael through that. And so I started getting to think all those years ago with them about what it means for a young person in their formative years to have an unexpected relationship with a trustworthy adult. And that's what camp can deliver too. So that's my fun new fact you might not have known about Michael and Jane. And it is such good work. Yes, good for them. And then Ben Mankiewicz, who will really get us started tonight. For the better part of the year, Ben was our most interesting person in residence at the Skirball because we had an exhibition here about the Hollywood blacklist. Yes, it was a great show, and it's an important history to recall. It is the history of Jewish creatives primarily, but other historically oppressed minorities as well, being disproportionately targeted through political retribution during the immediate post-war period here in this town and across the country for un-American activity through their expression. And Ben and his family were such a big part of our learning during that show. I was so grateful for his partnership with us throughout this, and I am so delighted that he returns to the Skirball stage tonight for this conversation. Enough of me and us. Let's get to the meat. Come on up. Ben and Michael, we can't wait.
I don't know about you, Michael, but my favorite part was when Jesse said the Hollywood blacklist, and people were like, yeah! That was great. Thanks for doing this. It's an honor to be sitting here with you. We had a lovely Zoom conversation to get us started. So I want to ask you first about the title, because having read it, and really more than having read it, having thought about it a lot after reading it, not the title, I read more than the title. I read the whole book. You know, when you're doing an interview and there's a good introduction to a book, you can't have your first question be about something that came up in the introduction, because it signals to the author that you didn't go any farther. Well, I'm actually asking about the title, which is even worse. So paddling seems like the most important word in the title, more important even than camp. And I'm just curious whether you think that's true.
Well, other than the word camp, which I could spell, I would say after it was written, after I wrote it, trying to think what it was about, what was I doing. It was really about it was about a lot of things, but it was about perseverance. It was about dusk is coming. You're on a lake with big headwinds. You got to get to the campsite before it gets dark. You got to break down into teams. One team has to get the firewood. The next team has to build the fire. The first team has to pitch the tents. Another team has to cook the meal. And the last team has to, what they call wallop, the dishes and everything. And if it doesn't happen, and it rains, which it does a lot in New England, and you don't do the tents well, the water comes in, you sleep in a wet sleeping bag, you haven't eaten, you still have to get up early the next morning and paddle, because if you go early enough, the lake is calm, and you have to persevere. And you have to persevere through teamwork, through getting along, helping everybody else. So that idea, which when you were in a canoe and you asked how much further to the staffmen, and they would say, just keep paddling, and you wanted to kill them. And if he didn't say that, he would say, just 2 or 3 more miles, which could be 6 more miles. And you learned how to keep going. And then when I went to the rest of my life, that whole idea of overcoming setbacks, persevering, doing exactly what you did at camp on a wilderness trip, not a baseball camp or a science camp, but a wilderness kind of camp, it became part of your DNA.
Because it's perseverance, but it's not just personal perseverance. Like, you have to keep going. Like, what strikes me as special about the camp experience that you really eloquently wrote about in the book is that camp experience is part of a larger collective good, of which you are an integral part, but so is the guy next to you, and so is the guy next to him. And that there is really inherent value in knowing that you have to complete your part, you have to keep going, because that is your part to a larger collective. I think it was Marx who said that first. It just occurred to me. Yeah.
Well, it is a communist camp, so that's all right. Well, I would say an example of that is I'm at Disney, a company I used to...
Were you at Disney? Is that where you were? Yeah.
He got married on the Disney Magic.
I did.
So how is that possible that I'm sitting next to somebody that got married on a ship that I kind of designed because I didn't like what they were doing?
Is that right?
Well, we decided, this is an endless story, it's about Disney, but they had a license with a big red ship. And all I got when I first got there was mail about how disgusting it was. And so I decided that I would go on this ship, and I got Anders, my son, and a friend to come with us. And as I was leaving LA, I decided I couldn't handle it, and I got his oldest brother to come with us. And I snuck on the ship, this horrible, disgusting ship, and snuck off and left Breck and these two little kids on the ship.
Yeah, it's good. It's good parenting. Yeah.
Went back to the Grand Floridian Hotel at Walt Disney World. Very happy there. Breck calls me up in the middle of the night saying, "Dad, you are missing the greatest thing. We're in a hurricane. The water is coming over the top. This is the most exciting thing I've ever been in." So we decided we'd have our own ships, and we hired, this has nothing to do with camp, by the way. We hired these admirals and these people from Norway and all these places, and they came back with ships that looked like Las Vegas, with gambling, and they have 12 stories high, you know, and we decided we would want to do a ship that looked like a real ship. And the first ship we did was the Disney Magic, but you had the intelligence of being married. Are you still married?
I'm still married.
There, okay.
It
works.
My wife is with her father, who's ill in New York. She would love to have been here. She would be very happy and smiling right now. Can I tell we're going to get back to camp, a slightly off-color story about getting married by the captain on that Disney ship? I'm going to assume the answer is yes. Robert Wagner was a guest of the TCM cruise. And Robert, RJ, to his friends, he is salt of the earth. He's just a great, great guy. And we'd had a party the night before. My dad was on the ship. He was a guest of the cruise, telling stories about growing up in Hollywood as he did, and about politics. And Robert, RJ, he had a couple of drinks, like a bottle of whiskey, of tequila. And it was mostly... And so the next morning, he's very hungover. And so he's wearing sunglasses. And at his job, because my wife's father is not there, none of my wife's family is there. That's how I planned it. He's wearing his sunglasses. And he says, "Look, if I'm going to walk you down the aisle and I'm wearing sunglasses, you have to wear sunglasses." You know, it's my wife's wedding. I don't think she wanted to wear aviator shades, but she was like, "Robert Wagner asked you to do something, you do." So he puts on the aviator shades, and then he leans in and he goes, "I'm going to give you the same advice that I gave my daughters on their wedding day. Chin up, tits out." And I thought, that's just what her dad would have said. All right, that's that story.
That's in my sequel.
So I'm curious whether... So I'm going to talk a little bit more about my family, because my daughter went to camp last year for the first time, sleepaway camp in New England, Pennsylvania, so not New England, in a camp called Onika. And it sounded like a girls' camp, sounded like much the same experience. And a lot of kids from that part of the Poconos, where my wife basically grew up, had gone to this camp. My daughter did not have a good time at camp. It didn't work for her. It didn't work for me either when I went for 1 year. So, and there's a sense in the book that what the counselors, you guys call them staffers, right? What the staffers at Keewaydin are doing is they're telling these kids to do things that frequently, not one of these things the kids want to do. So what value is it to impart to these kids who don't want to do anything and don't understand why you're doing it, that they should complete these tasks that they don't want to do? Because for you, it was easy. You kind of wanted to do them.
I can answer that, because none of that is in the book, because it's not true. I've not experienced that ever. I do have I have 9 grandchildren. One of Eloise is here, but one of them, Athena, excuse me, Athena, sorry, Athena. When you have that many.
You got 9, it's okay.
I am in trouble. Athena, I'm sorry. Not Athena, not Eloise, one of my granddaughters didn't like it. She didn't like the fact that they were tents and they were bugs,
right,
and there wasn't air conditioning, And there was, so that did not work for her. But many of the kids, it does work because, first of all, there's a lot of free time. And one of the great things about this camp is the free time. It's the first time in your life that you decide what you want to do. There's free time between activities where you decide what activity you want to do. There is a combustion of going toward adolescence and adulthood. And it's the first time your mother's not making your bed. It's the first time you're making the decision of what activity to do. It is the first time you may be going on a 5-day hiking trip in the Adirondacks or in Maine or in Canada, or a canoe trip where your staffmen, I was a staffman at 16, now you have to be 18, but the staffmen are mostly campers who've now graduated from camp or teachers a more mature level. So it's those kids that get to this camp. They start off the first week being homesick, and there are those, of course, but by the end of a couple of weeks, it is fun, and it is something that you haven't experienced before. And I understand for my grandchildren and the kids I talk to about the book, they give up their cell phones, they give up all their electronic equipment, and within one day they don't care.
Yeah.
They literally don't care, and they're in a different world. They wait on tables. Can you imagine a mother saying to the kid, take your dishes to the kitchen, and you get attitude from the kid?
I don't know what you're talking about, yeah.
Right. You don't get attitude at camp because everybody does it. And there's a camaraderie. You're at this camp, teamwork, helping your fellow campers. You can be on a canoe trip and you come to a portage, which is maybe a mile or two long, and you're carrying a canoe, and you have to support maybe a smaller kid that's carrying it with you. You have to have the teamwork. You have to learn these kinds of things. So it's not taught, it just is. So I know a lot of people who hated camp, but not people who were actually at this camp. Once they get there, they fall into place. Now I'm looking over there to a woman, Mary Clee, who was a friend of my sister who went to the sister camp. And at mid-season, the sister camp would come to visit the boys' camp, and my parents were there. And she would get off the bus in hysterically crying, asking immediately to be let out of this prison. So there are examples, and one of them happens to be here. But that's unusual. But she's unusual in a good way.
But the point I was trying to make with the long question was that even if they don't get it, even if they don't want to do it, they do it. And there is a benefit, which I guess, because they're kids, they don't see. They don't necessarily see the benefit they're getting, but I am certain that there is value in that, even if they don't get it in the moment.
Nobody gets it. I didn't get it. When somebody said to me, you're in charge of the tennis program as a staff at 16, I was mediocre. All of a sudden I was in charge of the tennis program. That's leadership, that's authority. You either do that well or you don't. No, you don't. You often don't get your own parents, which are probably more important than camp. They just are. They exist. And when you go to camp in a place different from the urban environment that you lived in, and have all those mosquito bites, and have a wet sleeping bag, and all the things that sound awful, it turns out to be an adventure and fun, and you learn a lot, and you learn to keep moving forward.
Little tangible things. Are you now able to, I'm not even talking, we can talk about the benefits of this in a corporate environment or in a creative environment, but I mean, you're a man of some means. I don't know exactly what it is, but I think they paid the head of Disney pretty well. You probably made a couple $100,000 a year.
Oh,
yeah. I'm curious whether, when things go wrong on vacation, when the air conditioning breaks in your house, are you the stuff that would slow down many of us, and by us, I mean me. Are you better, do you think you're better equipped to sort of handle when things go wrong because of your experience at Keewaydin?
Well, they don't teach you who to marry at Keewaydin. So let's start there. You have a wife.
I do, yeah,
Air
sure.
conditioning doesn't work. I'm off to work. Do you think you can fix it?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, there are advantages. I don't know. I don't know how to answer your question. I don't even remember what it was.
But sitting down there, you're like, hey, Ben, you can ask me anything. You know, the tenets of the camp, right? One of them, as I read the book, strikes me as the main thing I wrote down was just 4 words: that help the other fella. Like that is there's some real beauty in help the other fella. That is, you know, well, that's, you know, I mean, there's never been a time in our history when it hasn't been useful. It feels particularly needed now.
Yeah, it's hard because to some degree you're competitive with the other fellow, but if you are in a situation where you have to be helping another fellow, it's good to know it. It's a cliche because whoever said it first was appropriate, but there are all sorts of things like that. Leave the campsite cleaner than when you got there. Yeah. They kind of drill this into you. You don't even think about it. You just know it. So you know when you leave the campsite, it's got to be. All these things are valuable. You also learn how to be disappointed. I mean, I remember. I haven't talked about this. It is in the book, I believe, that I was like.
Was it in the introduction? Because otherwise, I don't know. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I should say one thing. John McPhee, who has an essay in this version, went to camp, went to Princeton, went to Harvard. When he's asked what is the most important place from which he got educated, he always says Keewaydin Camp. So there are people that feel like some of these cliches matter. But I was 13, and I thought I was going to win a bunch of awards. And I thought I was going to win.
Like at the end of the session,
yeah,
they're giving out these
so
awards.
they're all campus there, and they're giving out the trophies. And first was the tennis award, and I didn't get it. And then was the sailing award. I thought I was going to get that, and I didn't get it. And then there was the canoeing award, and I didn't get it. And then there was the best tripper award, and I didn't get it. And then the campfire ended, and I was like depressed, like you are if you're fired or if you have something bad that happens to you. And by the next day, somebody said to me, you want to play tennis? You want to play tetherball? And it was over. You just were not able to sit there and lament over your competitive nature. You wanted to kill the other fellow, you know, all that stuff. Because the environment is such that you don't think about that. But for the moment, you're disappointed. And that kind of, you know, we're all disappointed. We all don't, you know, get to, in high school, the whatever award. We all don't get the job. You have an interview, and you know, a friend of mine who I actually went to camp with said, I've never gone to raise money at a big firm in China or everywhere where the meeting doesn't end, you're sure you're going to get it. And then they don't call back. Yeah. How many auditions do people go up to and they don't call back? Right, okay. There's somebody who's had it happen.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether I learned that at camp, because I certainly don't like losing, but you kind of get over it. And keep paddling.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a degree of waking up the next morning and saying yes to tennis is a degree of paddling, right?
Right.
So there's a pretty powerful story toward the end of the book. I think you're a staffer, and you're on the canoe, and a kid got hurt because you got caught up in a moment.
You had to read that one, huh?
Yeah. No, but of course, what's telling is not the mistake, is what you do, is your acceptance of it.
No, it's also the other kids' reaction. So I'm in there are 2 staff and there are 8 kids on the Connecticut River. We were the first trip of Keewaydin that took the Connecticut River trip from Canada all the way to almost to Dartmouth. And it's a lot of
People are saying, wow, I don't even know I can't even imagine, I don't know where this is. I didn't even, the Connecticut River goes to Canada?
The Connecticut River is between Vermont and New Hampshire. Dartmouth is in New Hampshire. The Connecticut River starts in some lake in Canada. Anyway, so I did this trip. And the 2 staff are in the staff of 2 canoes with a kid in front of you, and then the 3 other canoes have 2 kids. And we were silly, and I was 18 or something, and we got way in front of them, and we got in the bushes along the river, and when they came up to us, we came out of the bushes screaming like idiots, and we backed into not a waterfall, but rapids, and we hit a rock sideways. He went flying out of the canoe.
How old was this kid?
13, 12, 13, 13. Hit his head, didn't knock him out. But you know, with a head wound,
They bleed.
a lot of blood.
Yeah.
I had to carry him to a road, got a car, got to a hospital. He got sewed up, rejoined the camp. We got back to camp. He, of course, had a head wound. He said he fell out of the canoe, never said Michael Eisner was an irresponsible staffman. His parents owned the biggest restaurant in Middlebury, Vermont, where we all went. He never told his parents. He never told anybody. And 40 years later, I walked into a hotel in Snowmass. He was behind the counter. He was in the hotel business. And I said, John, how are you? He said, I never told anybody. So this kid, I mean, I don't know what I learned. I thought.
Well, you actually admitted it. I mean, you said when you got back, you told, I mean, at least that's what you said in the book, that you were like, yeah, we were foolish.
Oh my God, I was completely irresponsible. But I was in charge, and I did something that I would do when I was 14, I shouldn't do when I was 18. On the other hand, I led a group of kids, 5 of them and me, up Mount Mansfield. We got in a horrendous rainstorm. We had nowhere to sleep. We couldn't get to the lean-to at the top. I got lost. We worked our way down the mountain following a stream till we got to a road. We walked down the road. We found a motel. We spent the night in the motel.
Thank God.
Yes, of course. I told her this was the secret. But you also grow up and do things that you didn't know you were capable of doing.
Yeah.
Now, the camp has never, I shouldn't say this, has never had a serious accident in 100 years, in 150 years, whatever it is. They're very careful, and today they have, satellite phones and all that. But at a young age, I was 18, and I was driving an open truck with 8 kids or 10 kids in the back from Vermont to northern Canada. I would never let Eric, my son, who's here, do that, ever. I don't know why they did that. They don't do that anymore. They did that then.
So you went to the camp, your father went to the camp.
My father went to the camp 100 years ago to this year. His father helped the camp acquire some land that they needed. My sister went with Mary Clee to Songadine, which is the girls' camp.
Did your father pressure you to go? Did you feel pressure, or was it clear you were going to go?
It was more than clear. It was Well, let me tell you how clear it was. In 1948, I was 9 or 8. I was 8. No, I was 7. I was 7. So my father decided he loved the camp. Although he was sent there, his mother had died. They went into the New York Times magazine section and saw an ad for a camp. It was Keewaydin. They sent him there. He, of course, was Jewish, the only Jewish kid in the camp who arrived by seaplane. You can imagine, his mother dies, he's the only Jew in the camp, and he arrives by seaplane. He was very popular.
I was going to say, very, very popular. Yeah.
And he hated it for the first team. Then he liked it. Then he went back. Then he became a staffman. Then he got fired because he had a girl in a canoe. Where he found her, I don't know. They let him back in. So in 1949, he decided to take me to see this camp.
Just to see it, like the year before.
I wasn't going that year. I was 7. So he gets there. He had gone to camp with now the director of the camp, and he decides that I should sleep overnight with the kids that are like 8 and 9, which of course is a nightmare for a 7-year-old. Where did you go to the bathroom? The whole thing was horrible. But then he and Wabus, who I dedicated the book to, who now I think I should take it back, he and Wabus decided that I should box. They had boxing. They don't have it anymore.
So
they put me in the ring, the boxing ring, with a kid that was 6'8", 250 pounds.
Right. And you haven't peed in 17 hours at this point. Right. Yeah.
And I got through that. We went home. And the next year I went as an 8-year-old.
Were you excited to go at 8? Or
what do you know at 8? I don't know. They told me I'm going to camp. I went to camp. I liked it. Yeah, I liked it. The only problem was, God, I'm thinking of all these things, is you went for 8 weeks. Now they go for 8 minutes. You go for 8 weeks. The first 4 weeks I was in a tent. And the next 4 weeks they put you into a cabin. You switch around. When I was there in 1950. So this guy, Dave Flight, was the staffman. I thought he was 100. He was like 19 or something. And he read a World War II story to the campers in his tent, about 6 of us, when the lights went out.
Over like multiple nights, right?
Yeah, for the first 4 weeks. And we got to the point where the paratroopers were jumping out of the plane into France. And then they put us in a cabin. And I've spent the last 83 years trying to find out what happened. And his daughter ended up running Songadiwan.
That's the girls' camp. Yeah.
Girls' camp. And he, in his 90s, was living on the lake. And I kept saying to the daughter, I've got to meet Dave Flight to find out what happened in this book. And I did. He didn't have any idea what I was talking about. And he wasn't senile. He just didn't remember the book from 70-some-odd years ago.
Yeah, weird, yeah.
That was in my first year. So it must have been traumatic because I remember it.
We won that war, by the way, just so you know.
I didn't know that because they were just jumping into France.
It was hard, but we won it. So you went, and eventually it didn't matter because you started to love it. So I'm curious what kind of, because your dad exerted, well, I mean, some pressure. He brings you to camp the year before, and then there's the boxing. Like, what do you feel as you start then? You have children, they come to be of age. Like, how do you get them to go without saying, you're at Eisner and you're going to this camp? Or maybe you did that. I don't know.
No, I started, you've seen the movie Diner?
Sure, of course. Yeah.
Where a guy is thinking about getting engaged to a woman.
Steve Guttenberg.
And he takes her to Yankee Stadium or someplace?
No, he gives her a 100-question quiz about the history of the Baltimore Colts.
Okay,
Yeah,
you know about it.
yeah.
So I took my wife to Yankee Stadium to see whether we were compatible. She did the crossword puzzle for the entire game,
Sure, yeah, all right.
which actually meant we probably were going to be compatible.
Yeah.
And I didn't have many requests of her, but I did say if we get married, our children are going to Kuwait. And if you don't agree to that, there is no marriage. Where's Jane? Did I not say that? Yes. So there's no question. I've tried that with my grandchildren. You know, you don't have as much power with your grandchildren as you do with your children. So I'm about 6 for 9 on that.
But I mean, do you have to exert, because first of all, there's something about it for you that isn't necessary, although I guess it's true for a lot of people. Like there is I work for a TV channel that is steeped in nostalgia, and I have learned that nostalgia is a misunderstood word. You know, it's too often seen as a poster of a movie you loved or a pennant from the, 1960 Yankees, probably 61 Yankees. The 60 Yankees lost to the Pirates. I don't have to tell you guys that. Bill Mazeroski. Nostalgia is a very powerful emotion, right? Connecting you to your past, connecting you to your family, your friends, the life that you have led. So it means something that you went to that camp and your dad went to that camp and your kids went to that camp. Like that is a powerful connection. And I guarantee you, I don't have to, I haven't met your son yet, but I guarantee you it's powerful for him and for his son.
Well, it's a little bit Proustian because something will happen, like you'll smell coffee that you're drinking and you think back to a time when you smelled coffee first time. So yes, all of that stuff sticks with you your whole life. But everybody is different. My oldest son was panicked to go to the camp. And we get to the camp, and within 10 minutes, he's in the water having a great time. And when we go at mid-season to see him, it looks like he can't wait for us to leave because he has his friends. And as we're leaving and driving away, he's standing 50 yards behind the car, and I see him in the rearview mirror just standing there. And I look at my wife, she's crying, we stop, no, we go on. But then Eric, who's over there, can't wait to go to camp. He gets there, and our first letter, you have to write a letter the day you get there. And he
The letters are in the book. They're great.
He writes to his grandparents, if my parents are there, send them back to get me. And then we get back to LA and there's a letter, I have to leave here, I'm not staying 8 weeks, get me back.
He writes, my cabin mates stole all my candy. I think they hate me.
Yeah, no, he said that.
Yeah.
Oh, is that in the book?
It's in the book.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he stole my candy.
Yeah.
And finally we knew okay. Now he went to the very little kid. He writes and says, it's okay, my staffman cut my toenails. We knew we were good. We knew we were there.
I love the strategy of writing to the grandparents, like bypassing the parents. It's very cagey.
Well, he figured that we were going to, they lived in Jamestown, New York, so he figured, I think we were planning to drive across the country. Is that what we were doing, Jane? What did she say?
Wrote to all the grandparents.
Right. Yeah, just if we were there, bring me back.
Right, covering his bases.
But then he was great. And did really well.
So obviously the totality of who you are is what you brought to your jobs at ABC and at Paramount and Disney. But I get the feeling that you feel like the critical part of your life of the leadership skills that you got, that you were able to lead. How long were you at Disney? 21 years, is that right?
No, I was there 5 years as a camper.
No, Disney. How long?
Disney.
It's like, wow, you
By
started.
the way,
yeah.
Disney is very much like Kuwait. I mean, as opposed to, you go to a grocery store in New York and they dare you walk across the street with your groceries. You go to a grocery store in Vermont at Disney, they carry it to your car. Disney has the same kind of culture. In a way, they hire, I mean, it's very interesting how Disney hires the people that have contact with the public. You want to hear how they hire?
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Because it has nothing to do with anything else we're talking about.
You're saying it.
That's
the connection.
I couldn't understand when I got to Disney why everybody was so nice. I mean, it was really weird. Everybody you talked to was nice.
So you came to Disney from Paramount, right?
I did.
And there was a tangible difference in how people talk to each other at Disney than at Paramount.
I can't even respond to that. I can't think of enough expletives to respond to that. Everybody's so nice. And I would ask people, why are they so nice? And I don't know whether I didn't do this. Maybe Walt did this. They hire in a round table, and they have candidates, 6 or 7 of them around the table, and then they have a Disney HR person. And they talk for an hour, or whatever it is, and they can tell in the hour who has a positive personality. It doesn't matter what they say as to, oh, I went to Stanford or whatever. And that is the way they hire. So they get, these are just the people that deal with the public. The people that don't with the public,
Sure.
But the people that deal with the public are that way. And it's so clever that you can discover a positive personality.
So they don't even really have to teach it. They're hiring people who have it instinctively, who already demonstrate it.
Oh, absolutely. That's the key. That's the key.
So there are parts to being a studio executive, even at Disney, that seem incompatible with a guy whose life plan was significantly influenced by make sure the campsite is in better condition than when you found it, look out for the other guy. Like,
yes and no. I mean, yes, there's horrible politics, and there's, you know, they want you to make a lot of money. You know, they leave you alone if you do well, all of that. But the basic tenet of Walt Disney, who in his way was a genius, forget the creativity and all that. He knew, he used to take his daughters to where the, what is that?
Griffith Park?
No, he did, where now is that, no, where the pony ride was. Beverly Center, thank you, is now there. That used to be a pony ride for divorced men and their children. That's what that was. He was not divorced, and he would take his daughters there and see how dirty and disgusting it was. And he thought that cleanliness was a good idea. So he instituted the idea that Disneyland is being painted every night, which it is. Not all of it, but a lot of it, every night. That you pick up papers, you don't leave papers. And a whole lot of things like that, possibly how you hire. He had a vision of treating the public with respect. And I think that is very similar to the way it was at Keewaydin, and I went to college in Ohio.
Where'd you go to college?
I went to Denison University, where they also smile and treat you well. I was lucky. I was lucky. I just happened to. So I don't know whether everybody could be that lucky, but I think the camp experience and all the things that go with it. I mean, I had a friend, my best friend, our brothers were best friend, and I had gone to this camp, so now my father insisted that he goes.
His father had...
His father had died in the war.
Right, and your father was became a surrogate father.
Right. So I was going to...
I read the whole book. Okay, go on.
I was going to be the big shot at 9 at this point. He was 10. And I took him to the alumni banquet or at the St. George Hotel in Brooklyn.
Like over Christmas or something,
Christmas.
right? Right. And you'd gone to the camp the previous year. You were trying to.
I was a big deal. I'd gone and he hadn't.
Right. You were going to entice him to go the following
Right.
year. Right.
So, I mean, I could write a book just about our relationship. We married roommates, but never mind. So I took him to the thing, and we went into the camp, and we went to the dining hall, and we sat down with all the campers, and they sang the song, and I mumbled it along as best I could, and then they had a prayer, which I did not remember.
They
there being
did the prayer. You didn't remember the prayer, huh?
No, and then we're sitting there, and the meal comes, and the next thing I know, this guy comes in, runs over to us. He was the director of Keewatin. We were at the wrong camp. I took him to the wrong camp.
Yeah.
So I was a little deflated about that. So now we are at camp.
Can we pause for 1 second in the story to just get, I love that you were like trying to sing the song of the wrong camp. Like you gave it a shot.
I was 9. So now we are at camp, and I'm a tennis player, he's a tennis player. I think I dominated him for a long time, but he got better and I got uncoordinated. And we had the big tournament to who wins, and I write about it. It was the third set. I was down 45-5. I came back, and I won. And about 4 years after the book came out, he said, "Michael, you did not win. I won." And I said, "John, when you write the book, you can win." So actually, I brought, if I have it, I want Eric to hear this. So we get reports from staffmen, send to your parents, you know, through the summer. So I found, if you can believe this, I just found it about a month ago in my mother's papers, a report from my staffman about how I was doing. I had just come back from the big wilderness trip.
How old are you at this point?
14.
So you've been at the camp a while.
Yeah, and I had gone through it with John the whole time. We actually boxed against each other earlier on when we were like 11, and they called it because we were giggling through the entire boxing. So I'm very proud of this one. Mike has shown initiative, imagination, and consideration for others this season. There has been a marked maturity, and that is why he was chosen to go on the Canadian trip. He has the ability and maturity. He has the ability, and maturity was the only question. Mid-season found him making a strong contribution and effort in track and canoeing. Right? That's
nice.
My parents were very happy. This is generally the critical letter, and I have only one criticism of which you are aware. Namely, when Mike and John Angelo, that's the guy, get together, they often fool around to excess and giggle like two girls. Apart from that, there is no difficulty of behavior, attributes, or considerations at this time. So that was after years of competition with my friend.
I just want to remind us as we look back on our past and lives our parents led and the lives that we've led, and we think back on the good old days, that you got a whole book here about a camp that thought, hey, here's what we'll do. We'll have two 11-year-old boys box, right? Yeah, I mean, it's insane. It's insane.
Well, I won't talk about the showers they made us take.
Well, that's so
which
you know,
they've changed since Eric complained.
So I was telling a couple of friends of mine who were here that I had one summer camp experience, 4 weeks at Camp Minnehaha, in Minnehaha Springs, West Virginia. I grew up in D.C. It was about 7 hours from D.C. I went to camp. I didn't like it. Right. First of all, there was a Lord of the Flies quality to it. Like they sent in, some kids would get care packages, other kids wouldn't. So one kid would have tons of candy and Kool-Aid. And then so me and my friend Mike, great kid, by the way, but he was hoarding it. He wasn't sharing it. So we broke into his locker and we stole it. I mean, he's hoarding it. We're stealing it, right?
You learned something.
That's right. You did. It was, but mostly what there was this giant, big communal bathroom, which is a big room with like 6 toilets. That's not for. My dad fought in World War II, and I always wondered, like, we'd go to a baseball game, and he just wanted to change his pants. He would just step out of the car and take his pants off in the parking lot and put on another pair of pants, right? He didn't care. But he'd been in the World War. Every morning, my father would wake up during the winter, in the Battle of the Bulge and beyond. He was a relief troop at the Battle of the Bulge. He was fighting from December of '44 to the end of the war. Worst winter in years in Europe. He'd wake up in the morning, he drove a Jeep. They would urinate on the tires of the Jeep to melt the ice. I didn't have to urinate on the tires to melt ice. None of us here have had to do that. So I like to go to the bathroom in privacy. So I didn't use the bathroom for 15 days. When I got to camp, and finally at 2 o'clock in the morning one morning, little 12-year-old me, 13 I think actually, scurried off to the bathroom, opened the door, and there are 5 other kids just like me, right? So I couldn't get past that. But there is something to, like, and as you were talking about the smell of coffee and my dad, who did not, but he didn't care. Like, I mean, if a coffee was hot, it was okay with my father. And I thought, yeah, that's because when he's 21 years old in a foxhole in icy water, you didn't really care how the coffee was,
I agree with you about the bathroom, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a problem. It was a significant problem. So that was the end of that. That was the end of sleepaway camp for me. But I tell you, Mike, do I call you Mike? Do people call you Mike? I just did it.
Either is fine.
Okay, all right.
For camp, Mike
Yeah,
is
sure.
kind of the right.
All right, Mr. Eisner.
Thank you.
That's safer. So as I've just said, I didn't like camp, but I loved this book. My daughter didn't like camp, but I loved this book. And I'm going to fly on a plane. I didn't really need the plane part. I'm going to fly to New York tomorrow, where my wife and daughter are, and I'm bringing the book, and I'm going to ask her to read it. Not because I want her to go to camp. She can't. She sort of made her decision there. But I want her to see, there's so many things in here that I want her to get. And I'm trying to figure out how much to pressure her to read the book.
Tell her it never ends once you go. And I know you're coming to an end and people want to leave here badly, but but when we started at Disney Hyperion Press, I got a call from the daughter of a guy who was my staffman when I was 10. And she said, my father has written 14 books. He was your staffman. He has never shown it to anybody, ever. Nobody in the family has read a book he's written for. And would you, because you've now started Hyperion Press, would you consider it? I said, yes, send it to me. I didn't really remember him until I saw a picture of him, and he was the kind of the James Dean character in 1950, very unique, very theatrical. And I said, send me a book. Never came. It now, 3 years ago.
So that was in like 2003 or something like that, or
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then a couple years ago, I get a call. I know you got a letter, you wrote me a letter, said send me the books, can we do it now? My father has agreed to send you the book. He was embarrassed before. Nobody's ever read it. So I said, send me one. And unsolicited material that doesn't come from an agent and doesn't come from a lawyer, it's usually terrible. But send me the book. So I read this book, and it's fantastic. I mean, it is unbelievable.
You couldn't, literally, one of those things, you can't put it down. Do you
I
finish it?
could not put it down. Great story, big epic story, starting in Cambodia, ending up in the U.S. and Northern California, Japanese, really fantastic. But I felt I wanted to like it, so I asked my wife to read it. She loved it.
You mean you were worried, maybe I'm just liking it because I want to be nice to this guy who meant something to me when I was a kid?
Right. So I said, I'll buy the book. And I bought the book, and I said, we'll develop the book. And we wrote scripts on this book called
Like,
The Game.
You were going to turn it into like an 8-part series.
And we're going to make it into a television series. I hadn't seen him for 75 years. I hadn't heard his name for 75 years. And he sent this. Now, I don't know if I can get Amazon, or it's really expensive. It's a big epic thing. I don't know if I can get it done. But Adam, I know you're out there. You got to get it done. Adam works for me, Noel. And I'm thinking it's going to be a great series. And so finally, I drove up toward Northern California, and he came out of his nursing home with his daughters, totally with it. Actually, he's in the picture in this book, he and I. And he was totally with it, but he was now 90. And we had a great lunch. At the end of the lunch, we took a picture. And in the picture from 1952 are 4 campers and 2 staff, and he's holding a paddle that he decorated himself. And he had that paddle at this lunch.
That's a pretty good camp. That's a pretty good camp. Michael Eisner, don't yet have your thunderous applause that I know it's coming, because I know some of you have a couple of questions that we can get in. Anybody have a question for Michael? Yeah, right there in the middle.
Can you give an example of help the other fellow that you apply in the corporate world?
Can you give an example of help the other fella that you applied in the corporate world?
I can give you an example of how it didn't work. So we had when I started at ABC, I was very low, and there was a guy who was equally low in administration. I was in a kind of a creative area. And I was given the job of running Saturday morning children's television. I won't go into how I got it, but I got it. And I didn't know anybody. So I said to him, do you want to go to California and be my California guy? He knew nothing either. You should feel nervous about ABC. And he said, I can't go because my wife is having psychiatric problems and I can't move. So I said, I'll get her a psychiatrist. So I looked everywhere, the people I knew, and I got her a psychiatrist, and I hired him in California, but he never went. He was in New York, he was doing the California job, and we told everybody that I wanted him in New York for 6 months to be with me before he goes to California. So finally his wife is enough cured, they go to California. He's now the ABC head of children's programming in California, working for me, having no experience. We actually did pretty well. And a year later, he comes back to New York and says to me he's been made head of children's programming at NBC and he's leaving. And I said, what? And I said, can I see your ticket? And he hands me the plane ticket. And I rip it up. And I throw him out of the office. So you know what? Sometimes you can help somebody and do something nice, and it doesn't work. And sometimes it does work. Most of the time, in my experience in working with many executives at Paramount or Disney or wherever, when I've reached out to help somebody that works for me or somebody in their family, it has worked 100%. But sometimes it doesn't.
Real quick to follow up on that, because it's something about, however we were made, people, something's materially broken in us that has us react to negativity so strongly, and positivity sometimes, we think we expect it, right? It's why negative politics works. It's why 375 people can laugh at something I say on Twitter, but if 5 people, call me something, you can imagine what it might be, like I'm incensed and I have to respond to them, right? It's 375 to 5. Why do I care, right? So I imagine that some of the tricky part, and what it says something about you, is that you can have that negative experience and know that that's just that one negative experience. That doesn't make you ever say, I'm not going to help people like that anymore.
No, and you remember it because it was so ridiculous. But I remember, I don't know why I told you that one. I could tell you 20 that were positive.
Yeah, because it's a negative, but you told it because the negative stories stand out. It's crazy. It's like we were put together slightly wrong. Why doesn't the good thing stand out?
If you are an editor and a creative executive or a CEO of a company like Disney or Paramount, or anywhere, you're basically an editor. You don't do it. You look at it's like a Chinese menu. There are 8 things, and you say, I'll take, sweet and sour soup or whatever. You pick from a group of things, and then you work with the people that bring it to life. And most of the time, that's really gratifying. And the most important people that I've worked with, like a Steven Spielberg, does not resent advice. He will listen to anybody, and he will be respectful, and then he does what he thinks is right. Many people that are way less talented than Steven Spielberg resent anybody who has advice. But the really smart people want to be helped and want to help you.
Well, those sound like lessons that you got at camp. Well, let's get another question, and I'll try not to hijack it. Right there in the front here. Hang on, we got a microphone coming in for you.
Hi, Michael. Welcome. My name is Jeffrey, and I just want to say 25 years ago at my USC graduation, you were the keynote speaker, and you spoke about the wonders of communication and education and technology. And I've gone on to be a theme park developer myself. A lot was based on the things you said that day that just got me at the soul level. I also so my question to you is, starting from your years of camp, how has that led your life beyond the boardroom, but to how you see yourself as a family man, of things you've learned from being in a mess hall or in a canoe?
Some of it is luck. I'm lucky that I met the person that I'm still married to. Or maybe it's like being an editor, that I finally found the right combination for me. I was brought up in a culturally Jewish family that strongly believes in the family environment. The first commercial, I got in a lot of trouble for this, the first commercial we made at Disney when I went there was a family is sitting around the breakfast table, a father, a mother, 3 kids, one of which is in a chair, like a 2-year-old. And all of a sudden, they all run out to go to work, the 2 parents, 2 of the older kids to school, and the little kid is left there alone. And then they all realize that, and they come running back into the room, and the slogan is, the family that plays together stays together, go to Walt Disney World. I got murdered. Mothers thought, how can you make a commercial where everybody leaves a kid sitting alone?
Right.
But the point is, the family that does things together, whether it's play together, pray together, whatever it is a good thing. So I don't know, that has nothing to do with camp. That's how I was brought up.
That was just a commercial, but there would never be a successful movie about parents who leave a child behind. That would It'd be an obvious failure. Nobody would go see that. They're in the rafters. If you can shout.
Mr. Eisner, I think I speak for a lot of people my age that have a lot of affection for you as a performer, doing intros for many specials we watched as we were kids. Was there anything at camp that prepared you to perform, to introduce things in the way they ended up doing so much?
Did you all hear that? Everybody get that? Good.
You must have been on some kind of psychedelic drugs.
He's got
Nobody
a beard.
has been
No.
worse than me at that. I decided, actually Frank Wells, who was the president, that the company when I came there needed a rudder. And the way to have a rudder was to put it back on Sunday night and have a host. And we went to a bunch of people. We went to Cary Grant, we went to Julie Andrews, and finally Frank said, you should do it. So I did a test. I did 68 takes for this test. We then went, I'm sure Jane went with me, we then went to a research place where the two-way mirrors, and you can look in and see these 8 people around a table who are shown this thing. It started off pretty good. Some woman said, not bad looking. Somebody else said something nice. And then a guy said, who the F does he think he is? What? He is awful. How dare he do that? So that put me back a little bit. But then I thought, now I'm going to do it. So I figured out that I'm talking to the audience and I could have a teleprompter on the camera because I couldn't remember a minute worth of dialogue. But with the teleprompter there, I could read it. Then I hired a guy who did political commercials, Bill Bradley, Ted Kennedy. And then we made 102 of the stupidest introductions ever. So I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, I will tell you that standing in front of a teleprompter and telling a story, you can't just get anybody to do that. It's an incredibly difficult job. No, you know what's funny though is because that's what I do, and I read a teleprompter really well, right? But it is, of course, just reading aloud. Like if you have a child and you've read a story to them, you've essentially read a teleprompter. But what's weird is when we brought people into TCM, really good actors, and I'm not just saying that, I'm talking top-notch actors. I mean, I'll mention one of my favorite actors working today, Billy Bob Thornton, who's never failed to dazzle me with the complexity he brings to characters. Can't read a teleprompter. Can't do it. So much so that he was like, forget it, just give me 3 bullet points and I will talk and get you there.
Best person ever on a teleprompter was Ronald Reagan. And he had a system which was foolproof. And I discovered it. He would have a speech written, and on the teleprompter would be the speech with the same number of pages written on the corner as what he had written there. So he would read the teleprompter, and then he would look down like he was looking at his speech, and then he'd go back to the prompter. And he would read on the prompter maybe 5 paragraphs. Then he'd go back and look at the speech. And I kept thinking, how did this man memorize all of that? He knew to go down and look, and then he turned the page when a prompter had the number of the page on.
Yeah,
He was unbelievable.
No, it's genius. I'm going to tell a very quick story. It has nothing to do with either of us because it's really good.
I think they want to leave.
So my father was, in addition to beating the Nazis, was Bobby Kennedy's press secretary. And many people know my father from announcing Senator Kennedy's death. In 1966, satellites were coming to television, the ability to have people in New York talk to people in Los Angeles and Washington, and CBS pitched a debate between the governor of California, Ronald Reagan, and a senator from New York, Robert Kennedy, and they would have a debate with one guy in California and one guy in Washington D.C., and they would broadcast it on some morning show on CBS. And, or maybe it was even in prime time. It was just a big deal where they weren't running against each other, but it was a Republican and a Democrat, right and left, talking about issues of the day. And Bobby Kennedy said, I don't want to do this. I'm not really that comfortable talking into a camera. And my father said, it's Ronald Reagan. He's an actor. He didn't know anything about policy. He's kind of an idiot. You'll sweep the floor with him, right? So they do the debate. The thing happens. Somebody'd ask him a question. Bobby would continue talking to the guy who asked the question. The camera's shooting him this way. He'd look down. He'd lose his place. He couldn't remember where the guy was. His eyes are darting all over the place. Ronald Reagan looked like Ronald Reagan when he answered the questions, right? And Reagan crushed him, swept him off the floor. And to which Bobby said, was the last goddamn time I ever listened to anything that comes out of your mouth. It was not, thankfully, but yeah, that was it. That was television right there, right? And of course, it wasn't, and Reagan was not, it would be impossible to argue that Reagan was dumb, but he was a very, very, very skilled communicator, really good communicator. All right, last question, then we got to go.
So when I went to camp, and I met my husband, who ended up going to the same camp, but we didn't know each other at the time, we had a similar experience. We loved camp. And we had our kids go to camp because I think it's the most smart, insidious way to get Jewish kids to love Judaism, because they connected all the traditions that they had to do at camp with all the fun that they had at camp. So the two things that our kids did learn, and I wanted to ask you about, Mr. Eisner, was they went to Jewish camp, the same one we went to, and they loved it. And the other thing that we made them do when they were a kid that you were involved in, because we loved it so much, is we made them watch Schoolhouse Rock. And I wanted to ask you a little bit about that experience, and if any of your thoughts from your experiences at camp came into play when you created that amazing series.
I can tell you about Schoolhouse Rock. The camp I went to was not a Jewish camp, but it was a very diverse camp. And I remember every Sunday the Catholic kids would leave and go off to a church. We would have it was a kind of a non-sectarian Sunday service, but it was not, it was really just a nice thing. But Schoolhouse Rock, I don't know if they're related, these two things, but Schoolhouse Rock came out of me, in a way, going to, if you can believe this, I am Jewish, 100%, went to an Episcopal grade school, Episcopal high school, and a Baptist college. And a Jewish culture. And so I know a lot about Christianity. And a guy came in to my office from an advertising agency. He was the ABC advertising agency, and he was one of the creative guys there. And he played Schoolhouse Rock. He played 3 is a Magic Number. And I thought, the Trinity, 3 is a big deal. I liked the song. I'm running children's programming. Why not? That was it. I didn't do any more thinking. He then did Conjunction Junction and all of the Schoolhouse Rocks. And it is the one thing from ABC that I was involved with, and we did a lot of stuff over a decade, that I get the more people are interested in that than they are Marcus Welby or Happy Days or whatever.
So I'm going to ask the last question. Then, do you think, and I almost asked you this before, given that I think it's fair to say that going to camp was the sort of other than the direct interactions with your family, most significant part of your childhood, defining part of your childhood was the fact that you spent these summers at camp as a kid, and then quickly at the earliest possible age became a counselor, your leadership skills start, and then you have a career starting there as a head of, children's television at ABC, and then leading to Disney, which is a well, it's Disney. Do you think that the experiences at camp and how meaningful they were to you made you a better suited executive to come up with programming that struck a chord with the children?
I think it was part of it. It was also going to school in Ohio. Frankly, it was. Having to
What the
deal-
hell does going to school in Ohio have to do with it? I've
Because
been to Ohio. Yeah.
No, because Ohio was very different than New York. I
Oh,
grew
yeah,
up
all right, yeah.
in New York.
Oh, so I mean, if you'd stayed in New York, then you wouldn't be that. It was getting away from New York that mattered.
No, I found friendlier people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think more than camp is your own family that you grew up in, having Father's Day at your grade school where it was the one day you didn't do your homework. You can imagine your father's reaction that you didn't. So I remember that. You know, you remember things through your whole childhood. And camp, you know, you don't have to go to camp to be successful. I think it helped me. I think it helps my family. But it's not, you know, I was sitting at a basketball game in New York, and some guy comes up to me and says, will you speak at the Tri-State Camping Conference? I was with John Angelo. And I said yes without even thinking twice. He says to me, I thought you only spoke at colleges and schools and things like that you're trying to get your kids
Because
into.
when you got asked this, you'd been asked this kind of thing all the time. You can't just say yes to people who come
I
up to you.
said yes when they were running down the court. And then I spoke, and it was the only time I ever got a standing ovation. So then I thought,
I just want to point out, until tonight.
Until
Little
tonight.
pressure. Okay, yeah.
and then I thought, hey, maybe I should write a book about it. I don't know. It's like a series of instincts. And then I thought, somebody came up to me. I never even heard of this agent. They came up to me, phoned me, and said, will you do a 20th anniversary book that you wrote about camp? And I said, I don't know. And he said, well, I think I can sell it. And I said, what do I have to do? He said, well, you have to rewrite it or something. I said, okay. It was camp. And
So
he sold
you-
it to Disney, which I was surprised.
And that's, by the way, where you included the story about the camper who'd written the book, like about the staffer who'd written the book. That's the epilogue, right? That story is the
That is the epilogue.
coda
and
to the book.
John McPhee stuff and stuff. Yeah.
All right, this has been great. I'm just saying, ladies and gentlemen, Michael Eisner.